Good morning, friends. Amanda here at Bare Bones Living, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today is somewhat of a busy day. Tuesdays are our swim class days, and that just tends to be a hectic day because then we get emotional that we have to leave swim class, and it's just a whole ordeal. So I like to do like a quick and easy meal on those days. It also takes me a lot of energy to get the boys dressed, get them in the car, get them to swim class, do the swim class with them because I have to do the swim class with Cole because he's too young, and then do it all over again to come back, and then we eat lunch, and it ends up being exhausting. So I am going to be making split pea soup, which my family absolutely loves. And I'm actually going to be making a triple batch because I figure while I'm making it, I might as well make all of what I have. And I have two really meaty ham bones, so I think I can stretch this out. Instead of making just 2 batches, I think I can make 3 batches. So that's what I'm going for today. I made a big roaster pan of homemade chicken broth just the other day. It's been in the refrigerator cooling, and I made that specifically to make soups before I start going into my canned chicken broth that I have in my garage, because I had so much scraps in my freezer. So I decided just to make a whole new batch, and that's what I'm going to use today. So this doesn't even seem fair to call it a recipe, but I'm going to be doing it. This is the first time. Usually I do just like a single batch in a crock pot all day. This is my first time making a really big batch. And everything that I'm using pretty much is frozen, except for the broth and the split peas and the herbs. Normally I would cook this on low all day for like 8 or 10 hours. But because everything is frozen for the most part, I'm going to crank it up to high for a little bit to help speed up the process and thaw these vegetables and the ham bones first, and then I'll turn it back down. But for one recipe, it calls for 1 pound of split peas. So I had 1 bag of split peas left over, and then I bought a whole 5-pound bag that you guys saw in my most recent Azure haul. So then I have another 2 pounds of split peas in here. So I'm just going to, this is just like a layer effect. I'm gonna put those 2 pounds of split peas in there. And I'm going to then use up this last 1 pound that I had in there. So I have 3 pounds of split peas in the bottom of this. Okay, so I thought I'd bring you guys down in here so you can see how I'm doing this. I'm going to tell you the measurements of just one recipe. I guess that's one recipe. And then just know that I'm tripling it. It calls for about 2 carrots chopped and 2 to 3 celery stalks chopped. So I'm just gonna kind of guess. And that could probably be enough, but I'm gonna add some more. That's probably enough. celery the same. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. I think I'm probably gonna use this whole bag. What I have left in here. And then it calls for 1 onion. And it calls for 1/2 cup of onion. It does not call for this next recipe or this next ingredient, but I think in 2020, from the 2020 garden season, I froze some squash and zucchini, and I won't be doing that again because I didn't shred it or anything like that, and I don't think this is going to work very well if I were to like try to like roast it up or something like that. So I'm just gonna add this into here since this is gonna kind of become, it'll melt down into this and it'll take on the flavor of the split pea soup, and I'm gonna kind of grind it up with my immersion blender anyway. So this is just a good way to use that. I'm gonna add in the garlic, and the recipe calls for one recipe, it calls for a tablespoon of garlic. I just minced up about 3 large cloves. And then I'm going to add the spices. Calls for 1/3 cup of parsley. It also calls for thyme, which I don't have right now. I'm gonna put in a few bay leaves. And these bay leaves that I got were gigantic, so a lot of them I broke up. And then salt and pepper. And I'll probably add more of that later at the end after I cook it all. And I can taste it and see what it's missing. And then I'm gonna take my ham bones and I'm gonna nestle them down into this. So there's one. I had only planned on making one, so one of my ham bones is thawed and the other one is not. That's why I'm gonna be putting it on high. This big guy I was not planning on using, and that's definitely froze. But might as well get them both in there and make a big pot, right? So then each batch of this calls for 6 cups of chicken broth. So I added, so this is the chicken broth. Hold on one second, baby. This is the chicken broth that I made the other day in the roaster. But then I also saved the chicken broth that was made during when I made that whole chicken and root vegetables. A ton of broth was made out of that, so I saved that. So that's why this looks a little dark, because I had beets in there, and so it dyed that a pretty dark color. So that's why it might look a little different. So this is 6 cups here, which is enough for just the one. And then I'll measure out another. Here's another one. And one last one, yep. And as this all starts to warm up, I'll spin these and make sure that those ham bones really get incorporated in there. And I can always add more broth if I need to later. But I'm gonna be, like I said, roasting this on high for an hour or two, just to get it nice and melted down and thawed, and then I'll turn it back down to low for probably another 6 hours, and I'll let you guys see that when it's time. Now I'm going to be processing the rest of this split pea soup that I made in my big roaster pan. I made approximately what I think to be about 3 servings of this. We enjoyed it that night when I made it. I ended up cooking it for about 10 hours, I think. And we enjoyed it that night, and we've been enjoying it for a couple of lunches here and there, but really the majority of this I want to can and put up in my pantry, which I am so excited to do because my family loves split pea soup, and to have it already made on hand would just be super awesome for me, especially with the impending delivery of our 3rd child. It's going to be really great to have this on hand. And if you guys have never had split pea soup, I really encourage you to try it. I had never had it ever growing up, and I just decided to try it once as an adult, I think maybe 2 years ago now. I think we were at a family party and someone was like, oh, does anyone want the ham bone? And I was like, okay, see what we can do with it. And so I made split pea soup, and I had always had this image of split pea soup as something that wouldn't be good, which is silly because I love peas and ham and everything else that goes into it. But I do admit it's not super appealing to the eye. Kind of looks like baby food or something like that. But it is such a rich, hearty soup that sticks to your bones, which is great for us Midwesterners who have really cold temperatures. We're actually getting a winter weather advisory for the next couple of days. We're supposed to get quite a bit of snow coming in. So this will be great to just have on hand, and really great for after the baby comes and I just don't have the energy or the time to be making dinner. I'll have something already in my pantry ready to go. And this with a nice crusty bread is really, the two of those things together is really awesome. I didn't show you guys how like the ham bone broke down. I did rotate it throughout the cooking so that all sides were in the broth at one point. And as it cooked down more and more, at one point everything was under the broth, so it was fine. And then I just really kind of push the meat off of the bone as I'm turning it and things like that. So I ended up with really big chunks of meat throughout that soup. And so when I go and use my immersion blender, I really kind of attack those big chunks of meat that are still in there. And I know that that's how my family likes it. And you can, that's what's so great about making the soup yourself. You can make it as big or as small as you want. I'm not going to take the time to pull all that ham out of there and dice it up and things like that, but you can totally do that. And there are some bigger chunks in here. But you can really just customize it to your family. And I know you guys saw that there were some bigger chunks in there when I did stir it up. But you can't taste the squash that was in there that I threw in. That was just a bonus ingredient that I had that I am not going to use in anything else. So might as well add it to the soup to bulk it up and get it used, but still get those nutrients. So I'm just warming this back up. And then I'm going to be pressure canning this in quart jars, giving it an inch of head space, and processing it for 90 minutes for my altitude. You guys, I have no words. I don't know what happened. I followed the directions for canning these. I gave them an inch of headspace. These are all brand new lids. There's no cracks on my jars. I don't know. I pressure can them at 10 pounds of pressure, which is where my elevation is. And I processed them for 90 minutes like I was supposed to. I vented it for 10 minutes like I always do. Didn't start the timer until it got up to pressure after it vented for 10 minutes. I don't know. God. But I have terrible siphoning happening here. And 2 of my jars actually blew off their lids. I mean, this is just like total, utter failure. I think I have none of them that are sealed. And what I can salvage from this, I will freeze, which is not ideal because then I have to thaw it to use it. And it's taking up freezer space, which is something that I'm trying to get away from. But I have no idea why. And I've pressure canned many things. I don't know why this is happening. I did just process some beans that I had a video for like 2 days ago, and the same thing happened. I had terrible siphoning, and 5 of my 8 jars did not seal. Luckily, I am having a party this weekend in which I can use some of those beans because I'm making chili, and then I just made enchiladas tonight, so I used the other beans. So, I mean, I could use them up right away, but that wasn't the object of doing that. And I've never had an issue with siphoning. And the jars were warm. The soup was warm. I'm scratching my head on this one. I would love to know what you guys think. I don't know if it's a pregnancy brain thing. I did have a little bit of difficulty maintaining pressure for whatever reason. I don't know what is going on with my stove, but for this canning project, it was very variable. I've always been able to turn down my burner all the way and maintain pressure. And if I turned it up from there, it would, it would be like at 13 pounds of pressure in like no time. But this time, it did not maintain pressure. And it did dip below 10. I had to stand here the whole time it was processing. And for a pregnant woman, standing for 90 minutes is not fun. Luckily, I was making dinner, so I was in the kitchen with it the whole time. And I saw it right away, so it was like a minute or 2 that it dipped below 10. But it still dipped below. But it got up pretty high also, and I don't know if that had something to do with it. It didn't reach 15 pounds of pressure, but I did notice that this had a lot of varying pressure in it. When I did my beans, it did not vary in pressure at all, and I still had this siphoning issue. So now I'm questioning everything, including myself. But this is really disappointing. You go through a lot of hard work to make good food. And then you go through a lot of hard work to preserve this food, to get it to literally blow up in your face. Not the way you want to end your day, especially in my state. But it happens, I guess. And I just gotta pick up the pieces where I can, and I'll try to salvage as much as I can. And hopefully someone will have kind comments to help and guide me. And like I said, I've pressure canned many things. If you guys look back in my videos, I've pressure canned other things as well. And I've never had any issues. And I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's my stove. I just don't know. But unfortunately, this is where I leave you. It is late. And I am tired. And feeling defeated currently. And now I have a mess to clean up. Yay. Hopefully the next one turns out better.
Thank you guys for stopping by today and joining in on our journey here at Bare Bones Living. We'll catch you on the next one.